Thanks for coming along to listen to us talk about the key ingredient of health tech, right? Which is data. And the potential of data is massive, right? In terms of using AI to uncover vast swathes of information to find new treatments and drugs, or proactively looking at patient medical records and information to catch problems before they make you sick. But there are, of course, still loads of kinks in the chain to work out, right? Like, how do you connect all the data sets stored across different places and on different systems with each other to unleash their full potential? And how do you tackle the inevitable bias and inequality that comes from using data that's trained on certain segments of the population, but not others? So in the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to try and unpack as much of that as we can. And I'm joined by 4 industry experts with a wide range of experience across the health tech spectrum. And I'm going to give them all 30 seconds or so to introduce themselves now.
So maybe you and I should change seats, though, just for...
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So you can see us all.
So that was the musical chairs bit, and now we're going to do the introductions.
Yeah, exactly. We're surprised. We'll move again in a few minutes.
Far away. Who are you?
Well, you just heard a few things about the intro here. So, yeah, I'm a health tech entrepreneur working on upgrading people with health tech on the inside.
Great.
That's my passion.
Marina.
I'm HealthTech founder, Duolingo for Autism, VReach, based in Latvia.
And Matt.
Matt, I've been 20 years now in the medtech industry, running different companies and inside the board of different medtech companies as well.
Brilliant. And Emil.
Yeah, I'm a computer scientist by education, trying to find and apply my skills in healthcare for about 10 years. We're in the head of Longenesis, which is the largest digital health player in the region, working towards acceleration of clinical research and biomedical research as such.
Great. Wow, that was really concise. Well done, guys. And I'm Kai. I'm a reporter at Sifted, which is a media publication focusing on startup and tech stuff in Europe. And I'm going to kick off by asking a really obvious question. And that's going to be why is data so important in health tech? Why are we sat on a panel discussing it? Matt, you've got 2 decades of experience in health tech. Maybe you should kick us off.
Right. Well, I think if you look at data, if you take a bigger perspective on things, we've always been surrounded by data. The big shift nowadays is that we have technology to actually grasp this data and do something with the data. I think what people need to realize is that if you don't do anything with data, it just doesn't have any value. So no data, no AI, there's no health tech. So there's no point for us, being here in front of you guys talking about this subject. And I think, again, a bigger perspective, we're all here, I've been myself heavily invested in this industry because it's a real passion, and I think a lot of people working in this area just to improve quality of life of patients, working hand in hand with physicians. I like what Hannes talked about, empowering physicians. It's not here to replace people, humans. It's here to empower humans, and I think that's the main, driver behind all of this, and that's the reason why you've seen this industry at a tremendous growth, especially the past 5 to 10 years now. So it's a key topic, and I understand it should be, addressed during this TechChill event.
So how's the way that health techs manage data, say, changed in the past few years? Has COVID had an impact? Marina, what do you think?
I think that, first of all, we have to understand that if we're talking about health tech, it's first of all about tech, obviously. Second of all, it's about health. And health, what is it? It is quality of life. So basically, if we can't really understand how we can measure the quality of life, we can't really improve it. So this is the key of what we do in VReach. We're trying to understand what is the framework of interpreting data for specialists, for physicians, clinicians, for managing a team who are about to change patients' lives, but they don't know how to do this. That's why we are here, why we have to found companies focused on health tech and help with technology to bridge the gap between patient experience, specialist experience, and us as people who know how to do this.
And so, Emil, your startups also functions on the R&D side of health tech. How's that changed since COVID? Has your approach to data shifted at all?
Sure. So the stakeholders, starting thinking more louder and active about applying different digital tech. I think, we went from a lack of tech to sometimes to oversaturation with tech, because everyone would like to get digitized. Everyone would like to have, telehealth solutions, digitized queuing solutions, etc. And a lot of industry representatives, heard about, data is new oil. I would like to better call it data is new oxygen. So we inhale data, and through data we can, build new innovations through that. But I'd like to perceive, data, and once we're talking with hospitals and different stakeholders, that data is like, the children's book. Basically the dots there with the numbers. So once you connect them, you have a brighter picture there. And apart from being very conservative sphere, COVID, I think, shifted the paradigm a little bit. But still, we need to, have a value-based solution, because sometimes people thinking, tech-driven, like, hey, we heard about blockchain, we heard about AI, we heard about data science, but it's not about the tech. It's about, as Marina outlined, defining the quality of life metrics, or how we can apply this as a modern screwdriver, not to screw the things up, but to build things to sustain and support patient through a whole the journey of patients. So basically, through whole the patient journey continuum, as we might call it.
Yeah. And Hannes, what about you? Do you think that COVID shifted how keen people are to, get implants, to track data in real time and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I think COVID was just a little catalyst to accelerate trends that were already there.
Yeah.
And profoundly, those 3 trends I mentioned, that remote monitoring and data-driven healthcare is a must. There is no other option, right? And what bothers me is that today we can build great dashboards of how a company works, of the cash flow and the inventory and the web traffic, but we don't have a similar system for these important meat bags that we inhabit, right? What are the data flows? And that's what I want to help create, and give me a real-time dashboard, what's going on the inside.
And why is that? Why don't we have that sort of system? Is it because we've got all these disparate data sets on different places and different systems around the world?
Yes. So the weakness for those of us who have worked in the digital health space for many years is, of course, the fragmentation.
Right.
You can have 100 different devices and there are different systems where everything is stored. I'd like to say that if the 2010s were about digital innovation, the 2020s is about digital integration. We need to find the best tools to integrate all these different sources of information, aggregate the data, and then package it in sort of actionable formats.
Okay.
So that is like the meta play that I see.
So what does a really good data-led approach mean then? Matt, what do you tell the companies you work with to do? How does that work?
Well, I think, and that is linked to what just Hannes told about. I think there's so many different companies out there developing different solutions that do not interconnect with each other. Number one, a lot of companies do not even have originally access to data to clinically validate their solution. And I think also the quality of data, that's also another question. And how are you capable of demonstrating that the data that you're using to demonstrate whatever you want to demonstrate is valid? That's another issue. And I think I tell a lot of companies, even though you're in the digital space, tech company, you are in the health space. So the health space is very much regulated. So that means you need to go through different steps. Tech companies make traditionally mistakes of wanting to go to market very fast, right? Deep tech companies, that's the case. But when you're looking at traditional health tech companies, that's not the case. You want to validate a technology, you want to have clinical trials, you want to have data to support whatever you want to say. And that will help drive the business. So that's the major challenge for a lot of digital health companies nowadays, is to take time. But that's somewhat controversial because you need to fund that time, right? So that's the reason why VCs are around and funding companies. And nowadays, because of the regulations, especially in Europe, are becoming even more and more stringent, it's really becoming a major burden for these companies to go to market as a medical device. So and I guess Hannes, with your solution, you probably need tons of data to support this, especially with the medical device regulation in place in Europe. So that's usually what I say to companies.
Okay, well, let's flip it and let's talk about cautionary tales then. Emil, what are the biggest mistakes that health techs can make when managing their data, or are there any challenges that they need to really overcome? What are the biggest difficulties?
Sure, I think, apart from a technical perspective that previous speaker outlined, about fragmentation or data being siloed across multiple institutions, and that's when COVID went, and we tried to change the mindset because industry adapted a lot to, clinical KOLs, okay, fine, we will adapt the solutions, but then, we understood that we cannot conduct clinical trials, as an example, for vaccine research, for, long COVID symptomatics, and we should share the data. And apart from fragmentation, data being siloed, I think one of the biggest mistakes is a human factor, the mindset factor there. Because if we speak about supporting the patient journey or supporting clinical research, the most important role, apart from clinical investigator, is patients, our patients. And with the paradigm that still is there about passive engagement, when you come to the doctor, the nurse comes, or residency program student comes and says, hey, how are you feeling? How was the drugs? How did you sleep? They mark this up and put this in the registries or put this in the clinical trial protocols. And for you as an individual, you don't get anything from that. And I think the shift of paradigm, this is the biggest challenge, how we can proactively engage patients or clinical research participants or even the broader population like ourselves here into population health-based research, into public health initiatives. And this is where we lack this digitized bridge. This is where technologies can help with a thing called dynamic e-consent as an example, where we have a control first and foremost of data being used as well as being invited to join prospective data or real-world data generation. Based on this data, we can have access to healthcare services, we can have access to the newest therapeutics or diagnostics, paradigms, rehabilitation mechanisms. I think this is the thing that we should change because these institutions are sitting on tons of data and there's like, what, this is a black box for us and we're being afraid for sure because as Mathieu outlined, regulation is there, it's harsh, so the the hammer of regulation can hit very bad on your fingers.
Yeah.
And this is where this both public and private as well as stakeholder partnerships should come into place because we should tell more about tech, we should work hand in hand, how high level it might sound with clinicians, understanding, for them to understand, not being programmers for sure, but for them to understand that this is not a black box. This is being, even maybe more secure than paper-based stuff, you put on the table and patients are coming, reading, oh wow, this guy is pretty harsh, has pretty harsh life, so
yeah.
That's about it, yeah.
And Marina, how do you go about getting your patients to engage with the data or, understanding the importance of data?
I love this question because you said, how do we engage patients? We don't engage patients because patients engage with us and what we had to do is provide the access towards the therapy. So basically, what we actually do, we just know that there are huge needs and there are a huge part of our society with different needs and unfortunately, healthcare systems for now fail to reach them. So what we actually do, we provide solution which connects all of the parts. And one of the solution from technical part, of course, it's data. And we have the second, maybe the grand big challenge to understand what is the quality of this data and how to get the way more specialists, clinicians to use this data for better health outcomes because it's quite complicated perception and concepts. So, hey, I do have my background in medicine. I was learning a lot. So why should I actually make it not on paper but on the app? And then you just engage with the needs of patients. And this is the thing, while you build a technology which is designed for patient-centric needs. This is the key, not to work separately to engaging, but to provide access to services which actually exist. But unfortunately, because of different circumstances connected to ecosystem, to different aspects which Emil was mentioning, unfortunately, not everything works, and we as a tech techies, we can make this work actually, and we can prove that we can do this.
Okay, so let's look at the other side of that coin then. And let's talk about whether or not medical professionals are engaged enough with the data. Hannes, what do you think? You've got quite a futuristic robotic solution.
Yeah, damn it. My reference, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, jokingly, I like to think of the medical doctors as the white coats, as a reference to the black coats of old, the priests, who were standing in front of the congregation and said, only we understand the Bible, you are not allowed to read the Bible. So you must just listen to our words and you may not look in the book yourselves. So we got rid of the priests, or those people migrated to other places where there were greater freedom. I see a potential similar shift here. Of course, yes, medicine is science-based, so I am joking a little bit, but I feel that many trained medical professionals, they do not embrace the data-driven paradigm. Mm-hmm. They do not embrace and understand that users can have enormous access to relevant information, data, decision tools, etc. That gives them unique and very powerful insights. So we need to keep challenging the old guard, the white coats, and enhance them with technology themselves, like smart decision-making systems.
So is data going to replace the doctor then? Are we going to have our medicine done by spreadsheets at some point? Matt, what do you reckon?
No, for me, I think that it's the AI-driven devices that have a strong future. So it's not pure AI, it's not pure software, it's, like it's been mentioned before, it's empowered humans. So for me, the first physicians that have been strongly reluctant to using AI-based solutions on the market have been radiologists. If you look at radiologists, they use software every single day, right? And so can you imagine a radiologist looking at medical imaging, medical images from early in the morning, 6, 7 a.m., doing a diagnosis and being as efficient, doing this the entire day and being as efficient at 7 p.m. It's not, let's face it, we are humans, right? So they have been the first on the market really to be really reluctant. And now we see somewhat a shift within the radiology field worldwide with the strong modality vendors, the GE, the Philips, the Siemens, embracing AI and really pushing this towards radiologists. And now more and more communities of radiologists understand that it's actually empowering them, making them, having a much precise, faster diagnosis. They can deal with more patients, and they can actually maybe spend time with their patients instead of just spending time in front of the screen. And that's, I think, a true paradigm shift, and progressively that's arriving in other areas. So it takes time because we mentioned about this earlier. It's human, right? We're reluctant to change. And I think we are at a prehistoric age for the digital era. So it's just the beginning. We'll go through different, multiple steps. It's going to be difficult, but progressively we'll embrace this and understand that it's not there to replace, but actually to empower us. So that's why I see strong growth, a strong future for AI, not standalone, but driven solutions.
And that's it, I guess, that AI is probably one of the areas of data that has the most potential to shake things up. But like right now, how much of it is bollocks? How much of AI is actually AI, and how much does it change things at the moment? Emil, what do you think?
I think, first and foremost, we can change the naming of AI, not artificial intelligence, but actually augmented intelligence. I think, from a point of perception for the clinical specialists and healthcare professionals, it might be, the thing standing robustly and providing you the ease of access as well as, time saving. And this is actually the perception, once again, why tech fails a lot of times, to be integrated in the healthcare space, because as a computer scientist, I think, hey, the more data I gather, the cooler I am, And I've seen the solutions, when they bring laptop or a tablet, say, you know what, I collected every second of a patient, like when he was peeing, eating, sleeping, coughing, and doing this stuff, dig into that. And it doesn't work that way. So, but coming back to your question about how much AI is AI, still it's a very, relative question, I might assume. I think it's, still AI is a, marketing word in most of the cases. In most of the cases, linear functions, it's just algorithms, to conduct switch case, decision tree structures. For sure, there is a lot of deep learning and, also synthetic data as an example that we use in the clinical research, for validation, which is super cool. Like the one in dermatology as an example, generating skin images based on the cohort, amazing. But I think this is about what matters. What matters is the result, once again, and it's not about, creating the coolest AI for sure. Once again, as a computer scientist, super cool. but it's about value you bring in there. So you start validating, you go as a user journey about the clinician, okay, so now he has 15 minutes, when he can look into his smartphone, so this is the time I should click in and put my solution, whether it's, just a decision-making tree, guy sitting on another side and typing, instead of a chatbot, or, deep learning algorithms, conducting this stuff. But there are interesting developments. As an example, federated learning as an example. And this is the concept that, once again, is being, very much praised by tech community and maybe by regulatory, if they will understand it a little bit deeper. But nevertheless, so how we can, once again, embrace the collaboration and train AI models without data leaving the hospital facility. And I think this kind of technologies are quite cool. Once again, the prehistoric age, we're sitting with Mathieu here. So, yeah, amazing times we live in.
So what side of this is the most work happening at the moment? Is it happening on the patient-facing side, or is it happening in the labs with sort of treatment and drug development?
Oh wow, good question. I think it's a symbiosis for sure in the labs. If we look into AI for drug discovery as an example, amazing things are happening because when you're doing this not manually but basically semi-automatically, what you need to do, it's like basically a guessing game. It's a lottery. So you need to define and design a set of candidates that will be targeting, the disease at certain points of development or certain point of structure. And with that in mind, for sure you need to analyze tons and tons, vast amount of data. And this is where, we can squeeze in the time and put it. There are recent developments like, the ones, the preclinical candidates being generated within the 2-3 months, a company called In Silico Medicine as an example, which is one of the leading in AI for drug discovery. And yeah, so the lab is there for sure. But once again, we should think about also, treatment value, because this is where the KOLs and clinical facilities are most interested in. And also patients are more interested in. Because if you're speaking about lab, very cool. It's like, the industrial revolution like happening, I don't know, BMW can adapt AI or, NVIDIA partnered with them to, have this virtual reality to train the robots. You sitting in BMW, you don't care about that. You care about, having, I don't know, seat heating, the massage there. So, this is what you care about. And this is where we also should bring, augmented intelligence in the process. So it's a combination.
And one of the most difficult things I think I've seen with HealthTech is scaling cross-border, because in Europe you've got such a fragmented regulatory system, right? I mean, Marina, is it a massive challenge sort of managing data around regulators that believe in slightly different things across Europe? Do you think there's much work to be done there?
Yeah, well, I think I'm not really sure if okay, thank you so much. Some people, I hear myself. Well, actually, yes, it's part of the challenges within companies which are entering market, which actually sometimes doesn't exist. And when you're innovating with the data, which actually you build the solutions, how you can get data and how you can understand whether this data we can use. You just can imagine that when you go to the doctor, for example, you need to go to your family doctor tomorrow, and actually all of you can't really get tomorrow just because they have a lot of bias, a lot of different circumstances, but you need it. So actually what we do, we bring virtual reality, we got data from your behavior, incorporate this into healthcare experience, and that's why how we give the data to specialists to get right diagnosis, right treatment, and right experience, so you enjoy the collaboration. And this is the thing what we do, and I believe all of the health companies do. So we try to connect all of these parts, and this is a huge question: how we can collaborate with the government, how we can collaborate with the societies, and we can't really not remember from medical field associations, because a lot of regulatory stuff coming from them, and we have to collaborate and prove that a lot of specialists are about to use this, and this is your agency to make it happen yesterday, because actually patients need to receive the services not like tomorrow, but unfortunately now. So this is the thing which I think should be somehow fixed, differently because all of the countries have different, as you said, regulations and have different design how to incorporate the new solutions. In Latvia, we have quite good ecosystem to build, to validate, to test, and to get to real market fit and to real, let's say, patients and users. So this is the road which we go, and I think this is amazing road, and building regulations together with the governments, together with medical associations. This is the thing which should be done in the same stage while you build product, while you connect to the doctors. Unfortunately or likely, I'm doctor myself, and that's I think what is the thing which we have to put the accent, that doctors are humans, we are humans, and what we have to do to understand what is your interest and my interest. I want to help you, and you're gonna help me, and let's understand how we can do this. First of all, in private sector, afterwards we prove the concepts, because all of the government needs another way of proof. So we just go this road and conduct the services and experiences.
Yes, very good answer. So let's try to look at this microscopically, taking concern of the time. So I think if we speak about data, we should outline two different topics: data ownership, which is a buzzword once again, but a lot of registry owners, or registry holders, not owners, are thinking about that this is their data. And it's also about mindset and applying old generation of tech, as I might call it, to centralize data from various registries. Very cool for research, but there are several concerns. First and foremost, it's retrospective data. So with this in mind, imagine we gather our data and put this in a registry in Belgium. Cool, Belgium scientists will be happy, but they will not have a connection to Emil, to everyone here, to actually generate real-world data, as well as gain value to us. And this is where we should shift the paradigm there, because just centralizing data and anonymizing it fully is a little bit old schooly. So what we need to do is understand how data should stay local for primary, tertiary treatment, etc., for the services, but meanwhile having access to real-time data discovery. And this is what our team is doing in 14 countries. So basically, through anonymized metadata, we put a curation platform, and then you can contact the investigator, you can contact the patient group through investigator, through clinician, to engage them, both receiving personalized value as well as receiving prospective data, which is of longitudinal data, such is of very high interest and added value in research as well as treatment.
Okay, cool. Well, look, we've only got a few minutes left, so we should probably chat about the biggest issue in data and healthcare, which is inequality in data sets, and how you go about, kind of, I guess, writing the inevitable bias that's going to come into play by using data sets that are trained on certain people and not others. Hannes, what do you do?
Well, I work, it's interesting that you brought up synthetic data, because I think there's a tremendous value. And for those of you who are not familiar, synthetic data is created data. So we can collect a lot of data about users, and then we can have a machine learning system look at that data and then generate new users, which has some great advantages. First of all, we can get rid of biases in the old data set, if it's gender skewed, for example, or age skewed. But also the new synthetic data set enable us to share the data completely free, because there are no real persons in the data set. But you can still have profiles, hundreds of thousands of persons, medical records, for example, but they're made up, so they're useless on an individual basis, but as an aggregate, you can see statistical properties that also exist in the old data set. So that is a big project that I have been working on, using synthetic data for, among other things, health applications. I encourage everyone to look into it if you're not familiar, because that, for me, is the way to unlock a lot of these data restrictions that we suffer from. Not least in Europe. I mean, in the US or Asia, they are much more free to use people's data.
Yeah.
So we need to, catch up with them in some way, and the synthetic data is a marvelous tool to do so.
And Matt, do you think that, certainly I'm reading a lot more about bias, say, in medical devices, which is based on, people's data and therefore leaving people out of the solution. Do you think we're becoming more aware of that as an issue? Have we become more aware of it?
I don't know if we're becoming more aware about it, but I think based on what Emil said earlier on, I think if we did have a European registry, again, taking a more broader perspective, we would like to, generate the future leaders, European leading health tech companies out there. And one way of doing this is making sure that the data quality set is good. And unless we do have a European registry, it's not going to be feasible, right? So it's not in the hands of medtech companies. It's really, for me, in the hands of governments, of the European Commission, to allow this. So you have different initiatives in different countries. For example, in France, there's a big initiative, for AI for health, trying to, gather and harness this data and do something with it, and try to accelerate a lot of innovations in getting all the communities, the research community, the tech community together, startups to, embrace this data and work together hand in hand, and to, again, do something with this data. But it's, unless we have a strong European initiative, we won't have, for me, at least the next, leaders of tomorrow in Europe to be able to compete with, the big players out in the US. So that's, my take on
Great.
this.
European registry. I think that's probably a good point to finish up on. Well, thanks very much, guys. Appreciate you coming along and chatting to me, and thanks for listening.
Right.
Enjoy the rest of the event.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.